Hey, this is Stu from 180 Nutrition and welcome to another episode of the Health Sessions. It's here that we connect with the world's best experts in health, wellness and human performance in an attempt to cut through the confusion around what it actually takes to achieve a long-lasting health. Now, I'm sure that's something that we all strive to have. I certainly do. Before we get into the show today, you might not know that we make products too. That's right, we're into whole food nutrition and have a range of superfoods and natural supplements to help support your day. If you are curious, want to find out more, just jump over to our website. That is 180nutrition.com.au and take a look. Okay, back to the show. This week, I'm excited to welcome Martin Silva. Martin is a transformation coach, award-winning fitness model, and personal trainer with over a decade of experience in the fitness industry. He takes a different approach for his clients by addressing areas of the mind and body not commonly discussed in the gym. In this episode, we discuss how he uses intermittent fasting and ketosis as key tools for body transformation, and we discuss the industry myths that may be holding us back from our goals. Over to Martin. Hey guys, this is Stu from 180 Nutrition, and I am delighted to welcome Martin Silva to the podcast. Martin, how are you, mate?
I'm great, mate. Thanks for having me on.
No, look, it's a pleasure. Really intrigued into getting into this conversation today as well. But first up, for everybody out there that may not be familiar with you or what you do, I just wondered if you could share a little bit of your journey with us.
Absolutely. Yeah, so to cut a long story short, really, I started lifting weights at a young age, and I've always been competitive and into sports and stuff from a young age. So always been, as I said, very competitive and very active as a child.
Yep.
I started lifting weights really at the age of like 14 and never looked back really. And when it comes to me stepping foot into the fitness industry, I qualified as a personal trainer by the age of 19. I'm now like 31.
Yep.
So, and I still do personal training now. So I've been doing that for, not very good at maths, but 12 years or something. And yeah, so about 4 or 5 years ago, I decided to compete for the first time as well. So I've climbed to the pro level as a fitness model athlete.
Yes.
So I've competed, I think, about 8 times. So I've taken my body to the extremes in that sense. And nowadays, really, over the last, say, 3 years, I have managed to, after, as you can imagine, being driven by aesthetics, that's probably the main reason why young lads in their teens start lifting weights anyway, is probably like insecurities or whatever. So obviously always being driven by aesthetics. I then managed to switch my mindset, which was the game changer for me, into making health a priority. That was about maybe 3 years ago.
Okay.
And ever since then, I have managed to maintain my physique and focus on my health and feeling good above anything. And that has now taken me to another level in terms of my message and actually helping people. So, yeah.
Great. Fantastic. So particularly interested in having a chat to you today because a lot of the guests that we have on the show and a lot of the questions that we receive as well are very weight focused, as in I need to lose weight, I want to keep the weight off and I want to sustain my lean body mass. But you, from the other side of the coin, when wanting to gain lean muscle, I mean, that in and of itself can be hard, if not much harder than losing weight. So I'm curious as to ask, I think first up, where do you start? So a client comes to you and they want to change their body composition, and they could be in any gamut of shape, size, condition, but they want to look like you. Because for everybody that can't see, obviously, you're a competitive athlete as well. So you've got the Men's Health cover model physique, which is
Thanks, mate.
Very, very hard to achieve, and I know it's very scientific as well in what you do. But
Absolutely.
So you got a new client comes through the door. They just want to get, they want to get ripped, but they want to stay healthy at the same time. So where do you take them first up?
Great question, Stu. So the most important thing, really, I think, which is kind of overlooked, is it sounds a bit kind of like woo-woo, but it's asking them why. So because going back to what I said earlier, most people are driven, whether they realize it or not, by insecurities.
Yep.
When it comes to getting in shape, most people I deal with are normally people who are not happy with certain parts of their body.
Yeah.
So they're kind of training because they don't like certain parts of their body. So I'll ask them why they want to do it first, because based on what I've achieved myself with my body and the journey I've been on, you're going to be disappointed if your goal is just purely aesthetics and to lose body fat.
Yeah.
When you get to the where you want to be, let's just say, for example, you want to drop 10% body fat. You achieve that in the space of, let's just say, half a year.
Yeah.
You get to the end of the road, and if you're going to be disappointed, if you're still just focusing on how you look, you're going to be disappointed at the end of it. So why is very, very important. I don't go too much into that, but the other things are obviously training history as well. So I like to know, what their past is in terms of have they been lifting weights regular in the past? Are they new to exercise?
Yeah.
Also, a major factor which I have been delving into a bit more now is stress management.
Yeah.
So most people in this day and age are in such a high state of stress all of the time, especially with people with technology. Most people have got office jobs and stuff nowadays. So people are not moving enough, overstimulated by, your iPhone and stuff. So the stress management and the level of stress these people are facing is really important as well. So they're kind of the first steps for me. And I'd say at the top of all that, which I didn't mention, is how do they move? So first point of contact, I'll do like these 3 assessments, which tell me where they're at in terms of where are their tight areas, which areas are overactive.
Yeah. And
it's very much similar for a lot of people, just different extremes. The typical kind of rounded shoulders. So most people have, like a protruded head, rounded shoulders, underactive posterior chain. So for the listeners, that's just like the mid back muscles, the glutes, the hamstrings are normally underactive. So I always try and do the posture assessments first. I always do that, and then I'll figure out where we need to go then. So it'll be like, right, you need to strengthen these areas. These areas are tight, so we need to stretch these areas out. So the mechanics and the science, as you mentioned, behind lifting weights is very important. There's a lot to it. So that was a long-winded answer for you there.
No, it's great. It's a good place to start. So if I'm in the newsagents, right, and I grab a GQ or a Men's Health or Men's Fitness and all those types of magazines and see a guy on the front cover and think, right, I'm going to do this myself, no problems. Take the magazine, go to the gym, start lifting weights. What are the most common mistakes do you think that I would run into if I just decided I'm just going to go hell for leather and hit the gym 5-6 times a week?
The most common mistakes, right, are literally, you just mentioned those 2 words then, hell for leather. Now, that is the thing is nowadays is training intensity. Yeah. It's the most abused training modality that there is out there. So people try and go from like 0 to 100, straight off the bat. Yeah. Right. And it's just not sustainable. So recovery, right, that is the game changer. That's another thing that I have learned loads about. Just over the last, say, 3 years, really, I've really started honing in on the science. But so recovery is so important. So people want to go to the gym, and the way people judge or measure their progress is just much like I did up until, again, 2-3 years ago, was how much am I aching? How much damage have I done to the muscles? Right. And if they're aching, let's just use legs as a body part. Yeah. We all know how hard it is when you go in and you do a leg session, right? Yeah. So people want to be aching for 3 to 4 days, can't walk properly. I've done a great job. Yeah. It's quite the opposite, Stu. So as you probably know, if your body will prioritize recovery over muscle growth. Yeah. So if you're looking at that, the guy on the cover of Men's Health, you want to look like him, he would have made recovery a priority by most likely doing it in a clever manner. But most people want to go every single day, no days off kind of mentality. And the body is just going to continuously prioritize the recovery over the muscle growth. So yes, you're still going to get results, but you get much, much better results if you train like the way I do now, where you hit the whole body. And we'll come to that soon. But instead of split routine and targeting like one body part at a time, you're much better off doing the full body, let's just say 3 times a week. and hitting the body parts. You're hitting the body parts more frequently and allowing your body to recover then. So we'll come to that a bit later, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
that makes sense, or was that a bit?
No, it does. Absolutely. Because you get, a picture in your head of these guys who are very chiseled, or women as well, because we've had a whole heap of queries about building sustained lean muscle from females as well. So yeah, very, very intrigued. But minimum effective dose, because you mentioned 3 times a week, and because on one side of the coin, people think, right, I'm all in, like 7 days a week, just charge. But for the minimum effective dose, if I wanted to see a change in body shape, how frequently should I train? What could I get away with?
Another great question, Stu. So I always recommend, for example, people I train on the first, let's just say we've done the consultation, I've done those assessments I talk about, they want to sign up for sessions. I'll say to them 2 times a week, especially someone who is a beginner, or even someone, to be honest, even someone who's doing split routine training and is no newcomer when it comes to lifting weights. 2 times a week, when I say full body, I mean you're covering all the most fundamental lifts, such as barbell squats, barbell deadlifts, or any type of deadlift, bench press, overhead press, kind of pull-ups or bent over rows, all the main compound exercises. If you're getting all of those in within 2 sessions, significant results if done properly. I can talk more detail if you want about like an example of sessions, but generally, to answer your question, 2 sessions a week will get most people significant results, but obviously that doesn't last forever. So let's just say for the average person, after say 4 to 6 weeks of doing 2 full body sessions a week, the body's going to have adapted by then generally. So the sweet spot for people to adapt to a certain type of training is 3 to 4 weeks. Right. So after that period, then a lot of people I train, I will then review. And I'll say, okay, maybe you need 3 full body sessions now, and then I'll get them to do some stuff in their own time. And if they're really keen, I can give them a program to do in their own time as well. Then, so you can literally train most days if you want to, but you can't hammer the body every day, Stu, as you know.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of body type as well, because we have different types of body there. People that are very susceptible to be able to build muscle quite easily, whereas on the other side of the coin you've got ectomorph, super lean, high metabolism, very hard to put on muscle, irrespective of what they eat, never put on weight. For those types of people, is it realistic to think that you could build and sustain muscle?
Absolutely, yeah. So we're talking about the ectomorphs mainly now, Stu?
Yes.
That's it. So believe it or not, that is my body type as well. I can talk forever about this, but I'll just simplify it a bit. Yeah. So that's my whole life. Like I've struggled to gain muscle. Right. So just my story, for example, I'm an ectomorph. So for the listeners, that's someone who's genetically lean and skinny. Yes. So I'm almost 6'2", and I've got long limbs as well, right? So I think when it comes to like puberty and stuff, I was a bit late, right? So when I got to about 16, 17, and I've been lifting weights for 3 years, I really started to make some gains then, but I was well out of proportion. But for me, it's been, like I said, I've been lifting weights now for 17, 18 years. So for me, it's been a long process. But yes, to answer your question, it's totally possible. But you have to, obviously, you need to be consuming enough calories, which I'm sure most people can guess that. And also, it's like, what I find with some people is like I had to make when I made certain sacrifices, like when I stopped playing rugby and I used to teach like spin classes and stuff like that. As soon as I stopped doing them and I just focused on lifting weights, it was a game changer. So it's very hard. If someone, for example, is an ectomorph, those people generally, not always, but kind of sporty individuals, and they like to play sports as well. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't matter how many calories you get in, that kind of stuff can be counterproductive for someone. Yeah. So what I would say is it is possible, but you need to hone in on lifting weights properly with good technique and doing some of the stuff we mentioned earlier, like getting those fundamental lifts in, such as squats, deadlifts, making those exercises like squats and deadlifts, which I like to call king and queen, right?
Yeah.
The most important exercises. Making those two exercises the cornerstone of your program, if you like. So as long as you're getting those kind of exercises in, you're eating enough calories, and you're not overdoing cardio and playing too much sport or whatever, it can definitely be done. It's just it does take a bit of sacrifice. That's all.
Okay, no, that's great advice. So you mentioned eating enough calories, and in my mind's eye, there's a certain type of picture that people form in their minds of people who are really trying to pack on the muscle, and that is essentially just glugging down protein shakes 24/7, irrespective of perhaps the nutrients in there, and just eating everything that they possibly can. And you mentioned earlier that your focus now is more upon long-term health as opposed.
That's right.
Yeah. So tell me about the importance of diet then in this equation. Wanting to pack on muscle, where would we start? What would we look to be eating?
Yeah. So the most important thing is really, there's a few things, but obviously, as you know, all of the macronutrients, protein, fats, and carbs are all very important. They all have different functions. Protein, as you know, is very important, but I feel like where we're at now, I feel like it's almost like some sort of magical macronutrient. Like you see that word is thrown around everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, but protein, having adequate protein is very, very important. Mm-hmm. So as a guideline, I'm just trying to appeal this to like the masses now. I do it in pounds, right? That's the only problem. So I know most people do kilos, but let's just say for somebody who really wants to focus on building muscle, I would start them off on like a gram of protein per pound of body weight.
Right.
And that normally is more than enough for most people. And what happens is when you've been lifting weights for longer and you start building muscle, you become actually, as you know, more sensitive to protein. Yeah. So I can go as low as like 0.6 grams per pound of body weight now, and I still build muscle. So start off on roughly about that as a guideline. And then I always recommend on day one for most people is to put the work in and actually start tracking your calorie intake. I still find this a bit of a battle with people because it's an extra job essentially. But as you know, the day and age we live in now, it's so easy with certain apps you can use.
Yes.
But tracking your calorie intake and building self-awareness in terms of what calories do I need to build muscle. Basically, what are your maintenance calories, right? So I can tell people now, it's quite easy to do. If you want to work out how many calories your body needs, just to maintain weight, right? So what you need to do is you need to track your steps as well, though. So your daily movement. Yeah. So if you can get like a wrist device such as a Fitbit, I always recommend start tracking your steps. So the first thing is to weigh yourself on day one. Yeah. Track your steps every day. Try not to change anything or do anything too drastic with cardio. And then track your calories every day. Do that for about 2 weeks. Weigh in again. If your weight hasn't changed much, and congratulations, you've worked out roughly what your maintenance calories are.
Right.
You can do, as you know, you can do calculations online and stuff. But like human metabolism is, once again, as you know, it's so complicated that they're just way too far out. The best way to do it is to track and then weigh yourself in after 2 weeks. So that for me is the most important thing. But obviously lifting weights properly, and a piece I think most people miss is strength training and actually lifting heavy weights.
Yes.
And doing some type of strength training phase for maybe 3 to 4 weeks where they just focus on doing anything from, say, 1 to 6 reps and lifting hard and heavy. For most people, because they're kind of stuck in the hypertrophy phase, as you notice, most people they like to stay within that 8 to 12 rep range, get a good pump, but you need to delve out of that and jump into strength training and also strength endurance as well. So there's different types of training, which are different ways to build muscle, really. So
okay, no, that's great. Well, look, I'm keen to get into your training routine as well, but before we do, just back on the diet, any particular type of diet that you found to be perhaps the most beneficial for lean muscle growth? And I'm talking about, we've got so many different types of diets right now in terms of keto, low carb, high carb, all of the above. What do you gravitate to?
So I gravitate, if I was to pick a diet, then like the word diet for me, I try to veer away from using that word, not only because it's been given kind of a bad name right now, because people are struggling so much to, as you mentioned, to sustain, long-term health or manage their weight, that they're jumping from one diet to the next. But having said that, for me, if I had to pick one, paleo. So that's kind of the paleo diet is. It's kind of how I eat, but not like spot on.
Yeah.
So for me, that kind of works the best. So it's around about 3 years ago when I kind of was still competing. About 4 or 5 years ago, actually, I eliminated dairy. I cut dairy out.
Okay.
I eliminated gluten, or at least reduced it significantly. And I started getting less gut issues, more energy. I used to get suffer with chest infections and stuff regular. Yeah. And the second I took dairy out, boom, that improved. So for me, just to kind of sum it up for the listeners, what the paleo diet is, it's essentially like the hunter-gatherer diet. That's kind of the label it's got. And you're eating whole foods. So you're eating a lot of plant foods, but also good quality meats, such as, like grass-fed steaks and free-range chicken. So the meats, as you know, if like your product, for example, they're grass-fed and whatnot.
Yes.
Obviously, there's a fine line between eating just any old meat and good quality meat, right? So it's mainly just what we evolved eating in theory anyway. Obviously, no one fully knows. So that's a diet that works the best for me if I had to pick one, Stu.
Okay, no, that's great. And in terms of the macros within that way of eating, are you where do you sit in terms of things like carbohydrates? Because I know that oftentimes people look into the paleo diet and think, oh, right, well, can't eat potatoes or bread or rice or pasta, and that makes up most people's carbohydrate intake during the week. So where are you focusing on your carbs with that diet?
Yeah, so with my carbs, I tend to have... Okay, I won't go too much into the science with that, but with my carbs, I don't have those kind of foods. Yeah. Just for the listeners, most of them are going to be quite well versed now after listening to your podcast for however long. But obviously, bread, pasta, and white rice, those kind of things. I do have a bit of white rice, mind. Yeah. I find, and the new studies are actually saying on that note that brown rice generally has more of a toxic effect with most people on the gut. Because of certain compounds in there. So white rice seems to sit better for me, but that's the only thing I'll have white. So with the carbs, I tend to stick to, for sauces, carb sauces, mainly sweet potato. Have a little bit of white rice. I do have black rice and red rice as well now. So I kind of mix the rice up. So I know that's not paleo. So that's I do have some grains, which are okay for me. And then I have fruit as well. I have some fruits, but obviously I don't overdo fruit because there's, a lot of fructose in fruit. But, for the listeners, fruit is really good for you. So that's one thing I'm finding quite frustrating is people are kind of making out that fruit's bad for you nowadays because of the stuff we see online, and all sugar's bad. But as you know, berries are my go-to when it comes to fruit. And obviously when it comes to plant-based carbohydrates or like the fibrous types, I have a lot of vegetables. That is my number one food nowadays. That's my go-to. Heaps of different types of vegetables, really. So, but in terms of how much carbs I have my diet consists of about 25% carbohydrates. Yes. Around about 25% protein, which is much lower than what most people have or need. And I have about 50% fat. So I function really well with fat. I'm pretty sure my body goes into ketosis quite regular because I do a lot of intermittent fasting. Right. And as I say, I do have a lot of fat. So so 50% fat, 25% carbs, 25% protein are there and about.
Okay, great. And I'm pleased that you mentioned intermittent fasting because that potentially is a strategy that people wouldn't necessarily associate with being able to build lean muscle and sustain lean muscle as well. So from a calorie perspective, would I be right in saying that irrespective of what your calorie load needs to be in a 24-hour period, as long as you get that in your eating window, then you're not going to start to lose muscle when you're fasting?
Absolutely. So you do, in most cases, now calorie surplus is necessary to build muscle. Yes. But I would actually argue that myself and some people I've trained Generally, the ones at a high level have still built muscle in a little bit of a deficit, but that's rare. So yes, generally you do need to be eating slightly more calories than your body's burning to build muscle.
Yeah.
But just as you said, as long as you get those calories into that window, which actually this is a fantastic question, because it makes me feel really good when I fast. Do you do some yourself, Stu, as well?
Absolutely. Generally, it's like a 16-8.
16-8, same.
Yeah. So so question quickly for you then, just to interject. Do you train fasted?
So yeah, I do for the most part.
Right.
So it depends really. So for example, so normally if I train like late morning, anything up to about 1 p.m, generally I'll just go fasted.
Yeah.
But to be honest, even when I leave it, it's a complete, as you know yourself, right? One great thing that fasting teaches you is what real hunger is. You actually realize that for most of your life, you've just been eating based on cravings.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
it's not even true hunger. So mate, I feel much better when I train in a fasted state. Sometimes I'll have a little bit of fat, like I'll have a bulletproof coffee beforehand. Yep. Which, again, most of the listeners probably know is just obviously coffee with MCT oil and butter, and that gives me a little boost. But if I'm doing strength training, if I'm doing heavy weights, generally I'll plan to train a bit later in the day and get some sort of carbohydrates in, because I find I'm a little bit stronger then.
Yes.
But to answer the question, most of the time I lift weights. To be honest, most of the time 14 to 16 hours into a fast is my sweet spot. Believe it or not. So,
fantastic. I wouldn't have expected that. And I know that there's so much confusion, and clearly as well, we're so it's dependent on our individual genetics and biology. But no, that's very interesting to hear. So what's your take then on the immediacy of having to get protein in straight after a weight session? Because I've spoken to a couple of people, and there are two very conflicting views. And a metabolic scientist said, well, look, there could be data to show that when you're loading up with protein straight after a training session, you're actually spiking insulin, and insulin then starts to inhibit the muscle building process. But then on the other side, there's the old school camp that says within that 30-minute window, load up on protein, hence all the shakes that you see at the gym. What's your take on that?
To be honest, right, for the most part, I would say that is definitely not something most people listening to this need to worry about.
Yep.
I would say that's literally splitting hairs in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
But if I was to say, like, for example, when I'm doing a competition and I'm like 4 weeks out from a comp, my body fat, let's just say, is about like 6-7% at this point, maybe 8% on the calipers or whatever. Anyways, I was just going to say, so when I'm about 4 weeks out from a comp, that's when I'll really start focusing on getting that protein in sooner rather than later after my session. But your body is not going to, your body at the very last resort is going to use muscle tissue as energy.
Right.
Like most people, no offense to most people, but most of us do have so much fat stored in the body, right, to burn up.
Yeah.
So what I would say to people, it does depend on your goals. Now, if your goal is fat loss, right? Another tip for the listeners is if I'm trying to get leaner for a show or photo shoot, I will actually drag the fast out after training as long as I can. So generally, I won't go longer than about 4 hours if I've got a show, 2 to 4 hours. My body is just chewing fat at that point for the most part. So if you drag that fast out after training, for most people, your body is just going to be chewing away at fat for the most part. So I don't think it's that important for most people. I really don't.
Got it.
To answer that question, yeah.
Excellent. And go-to supplements. So supplements that, and these don't necessarily have to be just about building muscle as well. They might be about overall health. Could be your fish oil, certain vitamins, things like that. So perhaps we can dip into both. Ones that you would take specifically to feel your best, and then ones that you dial into when you know that you want to assist your goals in terms of a show or muscle building, etc.
So my number one supplement, Stu, actually is creatine.
Yep.
That's the one that I get really noticeable results with, like instantly.
Okay.
So yeah, that's probably, if I had to say my favorite in terms of, let's just say in terms of performance-based supplements, creatine, and I do take protein because I find it quite hard, especially with intermittent fasting, as you know. But right now, like for example, for me to not lose weight, I need like 3,900 calories. So to get that into like 8 hours, I generally need like a protein supplement.
Yeah.
So those two, in terms of like, I don't know how to explain that, but purely performance based. But other supplements I take, I've just started to. What was one I? Okay, so I don't know whether you class MCT oil as one. I've just started adding that to like the old coffee and stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm a big fan now of nootropics.
Right.
So I've just recently started taking L-theanine.
Yes.
With my coffees, and it helps me because, as you know, with caffeine you can play around with caffeine and actually get different effects.
Yes.
So the MCT oil and butter like more works better for sustained energy for me.
Yeah.
Whereas the L-theanine, I find it just doesn't give me as much of a crash afterwards. So L-theanine I've been taking as a nootropic, and I've just started taking 5-HTP as well, which is apparently a really good one.
Yeah.
What else am I taking at the moment now? And then I do like to take a green juice or something like the stuff you sell.
Yes.
Like like a good quality kind of organic green juice, just in case I don't. To be honest, like to get the right amount of vegetables in, folks, is pretty much impossible without a supplement.
Yeah.
So I eat loads of vegetables, but I still try and have one of them a day as well. So they're my top ones really, but it's mainly just whole foods for me nowadays, mate. That's
fantastic.
What works wonders for me.
Yeah. That is good to hear. So I'm keen then for you to take us through a typical day then for you in terms of it's a training day. So our listeners can get a little bit of an inclination as to how you train, timing, and we've already discussed how you eat. But I'm kind of keen as to what time you get up in the morning, what you do with your supplements, and then all the way through training, and then perhaps we can delve into a little bit more about the program as well.
Sounds good. So right now I am quite busy as a personal trainer. So I am doing like 30 odd PT sessions a week, which for me is more than enough because I've got a podcast of my own and stuff as well. But every single day I start at 5 a.m. So I say every day, sorry, Monday to Friday.
Yes.
I'm in work at 5 a.m. So my mornings are really busy with clients. That's the busiest part of my day.
Yeah.
So I'm up at 5 a.m. I'll train clients, let's just say on average, through till about, I don't know, like 10, 11, sometimes 12.
Yeah.
And then I'll sometimes have a few in the evening. So I'll generally train then around about midday-ish or early afternoon. So when it comes to training then, let's just say, for example, I'm trying to use yesterday as an example now. So I had clients in the morning. Yesterday I trained around about like 1:30 in the evening. In the afternoon. So I had eaten nothing in the morning.
Right.
But the day before, I finished like what the listeners need to bear in mind is it's normally based on what you've had over the last 24 hours, what you've eaten.
Yeah.
Generally, or more longer than that, but just for argument's sake, within the last 24 hours. So I know the day before I had a decent amount of calories. So I was like, right, I'll just fast now. When I say fasting, though, I'm not sure about you, Stu, but do you have coffee when you're in the fasted state, or do you?
Well, you know what? I've never had a cup of coffee in my life.
Wow.
But I'll tea for sure. Like herb tea, black tea.
Great stuff.
A whole heap of water. But yeah, no coffee. But we get lots of questions on intermittent fasting and the use of coffee, and our answer to that is always if black coffee's fine. You can
absolutely
run with that. Just don't load it up with sugar and milk and dairy if you're wanting to maintain that fasting state.
That's exactly right. You're still going to get loads of the benefits fasting if you were to have a few, black coffees. So, but like if you're going to go really into it, like I heard someone say recently that it's not quite the same because your liver's still, but generally you're still in a fasted state.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I would have I had a few coffees yesterday in the morning. So I had a bulletproof then again before training in the afternoon. So that's an extreme version. So yesterday I trained about 16, 17 hours into a fast.
Wow. And
my training session consisted of, it's a full body session. So now I'm doing like a program which is geared purely it's mainly for strength. But it's also aesthetics. Like that all comes hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
So it was a full body session. So yesterday's, so I won't go too much into the workout, but it's always full body. But the workouts I'm doing now, it's only like 4 or 5 exercises I'm doing. So yesterday I done deadlifts. I'm doing kind of like the hypertrophy kind of range now, phase.
Yeah.
So it's like 8 to 12 reps on most things. Although the program is like, it's a 12-week program, it's mainly geared towards strength. But without going too much into it, I'm doing hypertrophy. So it's 8 to 12 reps. And I was doing deadlifts. I started off with deadlifts, quite heavy, 8 to 12 reps. Then I did incline chest press. And I done some, it was some drop sets on that actually. Then I did some step ups on the bench. So heavy, quite heavy step ups, like for me it's heavy with my legs. I done 80 kilos step ups, 8 to 12. So I think it was 6 to 8 reps on each leg.
Wow.
And then I finished off with some curls. So that was like kind of full body.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll go more into detail about because I know a lot of the listeners are thinking, but he's missed out loads of body parts there.
Yeah.
So I'll come to that soon, right? Because the days in between those full body sessions, I'm still doing some other stuff. So that's kind of my day. So I'm doing quite a lot of clients. I've got my own podcast as well, and I'm doing online stuff. So when I'm outside of work or not training, I'm normally on the laptop as well.
Yes.
I try to have the odd cat nap in the afternoon to recharge, but that doesn't always happen. So much like yourself, mate, I'm just getting into that, like just non-stop working because obviously like yourself, you enjoy what you do. So it's just like it's just a way of life now, isn't it?
Yeah, you absolutely just make it work. And
definitely.
You mentioned earlier on as well about the recovery, and I know that we've spoken to so many people who have said exactly the same thing. And I think it was Mark Sisson who said you don't get fitter, stronger, and faster in the gym. You get fitter, stronger, and faster recovering from the gym. And for me, the biggest pillar of recovery is sleep. And I know that you can. Some of us perhaps don't have the luxury of being able to get to the gym super early or maybe at lunchtime, and they'll go in after work, possibly 7, 8, 9 o'clock, which can upset your sleep. Do you have any advice for the people perhaps that need to train later on or are struggling with their sleep as well? What have you found works?
Absolutely. So I would say the most important thing, don't get me wrong, with sleep, duration is important, but the quality of sleep is so important. And I think, I'm pretty certain about this because I'm aware of it myself, I think in this day and age, most of us are not getting good quality sleep.
Yeah.
So again, most people, we're overstimulated. So the most important thing is actually preparing yourself for a good night's sleep. So I try to do this, but I'm not always successful. I try and prepare myself by a good sleep. Now, what I mean by that is no electrical activity on my brain generally past about 8 p.m. Right. So I'm normally out cold by 10 p.m. by the way, right? Because I start work at 5 a.m. So an hour before bed, if the listeners can try and focus on this now, or at least try to eliminate electrical activity on the brain an hour before before bed. And what I've invested in is some blue light blockers. Have you ever tried those?
I use them, absolutely.
Yeah. Have you got the big orange ones, or have you got the slick ones?
I've got two. It's interesting, and they absolutely do work. And people think that this is really woo woo. You're kind of sitting there looking like a builder if you've got the kind of full face things,
like a welder.
But absolutely, but they genuinely make you feel more calm.
100%.
And there's huge science to support that as well. So yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. That's it. So that blue light, folks, right? That blue light on the brain, it really does, as you said with the studies, they're proving that it does actually drastically degrade your melatonin levels, which is the sleep-induced hormone. It's really, really important for quality sleep. So I would say the main takeaway for them is to focus on good quality sleep. So try and come off your phone. I always read before bed. I try and get just one chapter a day is my goal. Yeah. So like if you can read, this is obviously a bit kind of it's not pinpoint, but if you can read like a chapter a day of a book, then you'll read on average around 36 books a year, right? So it all adds up. So you're growing and you're developing your knowledge, but also it helps me sleep big time when I read a book before bed. Helps me wind down. Yeah. So that's the most important thing. But then if people are training later on in the day, another thing is as well with quality of sleep, which people overlook, is caffeine.
Right.
Now, more studies have come out that although people think, I'm fine, I go straight to sleep. Like, so do I. It's totally fine. But they've proven that caffeine has like a 12-hour, like a 6-hour half-life.
Yes.
Which means it's in your system potentially. There's a lot of variances here. Everyone's different in terms of metabolizing caffeine, but it's in your system for like 12 hours, right? So for me, I try not to have coffee after about 1 p.m. And I've actually dropped my intake down now a little bit. So I'm trying to taper it off, Stu. So for the new year, I don't want to be reliant on it, because that's my go-to drug is caffeine.
Got it.
So be mindful of that, folks, as well. Try and cut the caffeine off a bit earlier. And I understand that's very hard for some people who train in the evening, though.
Yes.
They like to have pre-workout or something.
Yeah.
But what I would say, you don't sell any pre-workouts, do you, Stu?
No.
Glad about that. I don't want to shoot pre-workouts down if you sell them, you know what I mean? But no, I was just going to say to people, just to avoid pre-workouts, just please, you probably got this message to them already, but honestly, they're bad news, most pre-workouts. So one thing might be just to switch, if you're training, let's say at 6 p.m., and they used to having their pre-workout right before, which is a nightmare because you're going to bed in a few hours, is just maybe just switch over to like a shot of coffee or something before training, and just try and have less caffeine in the evening. So just to answer that question now in like a sentence or two, focus on quality of sleep. Yes, duration is very important. So for me, I only get about on average probably about 6.5 to 7 hours on average over the week.
Yes.
And another thing for the listeners is to focus on the overall for the week and not to panic if you get like a night where you get 4 hours. Just try and catch up on that sleep, and try and average, if you can, over the space of a week. Let's just say 7 to 8 hours for most people.
Perfect. Great. Fantastic. So in terms of your training program as well, so how many would you train every day? Like how many days is your sweet spot for training?
Yeah. So I train probably on average around 6 times a week. Yeah.
Right.
So, but when I say training, so this is a fantastic question, because 3 of my sessions are full body. Now, when I say full body, I mean literally the whole body. Starting off with the bigger body parts.
Right.
So let's just say I'm doing the typical hypertrophy training, which is what most people tend to do more of. I'll start off with squats. Just say one of my sessions will be squats. Then I'll start off with squats, and then for me, because legs is like a bit of a problem area, I'll do another exercise for legs, which is not really necessary, but I'll do squats. Then I'll do, say, straight leg deadlifts for legs, and that's it for legs. Then I'll go, say, for back, I'll do some pull-ups or bent over row. Then I'll do one exercise for chest, like an incline barbell press. Then I'll go down to, I'll do an exercise for shoulders, maybe I'll just using the most important exercise now, like an overhead shoulder press. Then I'll sometimes do like some lateral raises for the shoulders as well, because you can isolate certain parts of the shoulders. And then I'll work my weight right down, including biceps. I'll do something for biceps, one exercise for triceps, abs, calves. And I'll do that 3 times a week. And what happens then, Stu, is you're sending that muscle building signal. As you know, the muscle building signal generally, right, will be at its loudest for 48, anything from 24 to 72 hours. So let's just say 48 hours, between. So I'm training the full body pretty much every other day. So I'm continuously sending that muscle building signal to every body part, right? So if you're to do split routine training, the reason why full body training, by the way, has been proven in studies to get better results, one of the reasons is frequency. Because when people do split routine training, a lot of people are just hitting one body part a week, and they're hammering each body part. So it's damaging the muscle a lot, and they're aching for 3 or 4 days or whatever. And then after, say, 2 or 3 days, the muscle building signal has just dampened and faded and died. So what happens then is, that's it then until the following week. So you've got 3 or 4 days of the week where there's no muscle building signal. So just to dumb it down, when I do those 3 full body sessions, I'm not hammering each body part. Yes, I'll be feeling it for maybe a day or 2, but that's it then. And that, like, generally, if you're aching for longer than a day or 2, just be mindful you've done too much. You may have broken down some connective tissue, as well as muscle tissue, such as tendons and stuff, a little bit. And the body will then prioritize your recovery over muscle growth. So here's to do enough to elicit change, but not hammer the body parts.
Okay, no, that's excellent. And how long would it?
Oh, sorry, I was going to say one more thing. The days in between, I then will focus on the weak body parts. So I'll do, for example, I will do a split routine session, but I call it a focus session. Where I'll say, for me, when I'm leading up to shows and stuff, quads, calves, and shoulders, I lose muscle off towards the end. So I'll do quads and calves on one of the days in between. Then the other day I'll maybe do some shoulders and calves. By the way, folks, I'm training calves pretty much every day, but they still don't grow. I'm sure a lot of the guys can relate to this.
Genetics, right?
Genetics, yeah, that's it. So yeah, on the days in between then, if you really want to get insane results, focus on your weak body parts on the days in between, but don't go full throttle.
Yeah.
Do maybe 70% of the intensity you would normally do, and just really focus on connecting to those weak body parts and watch what happens.
Great.
It's insane.
Brilliant. And how long would a typical session last? Because I'm aware that people can spend too long in the gym.
That's right. Typical session. This is the only thing. So when I'm doing the full body strength sessions, they can take a bit longer. They can take me up to sometimes an hour and a half.
Right.
But bear in mind, that's like 3 times a week.
Yeah.
So if you add it all up, it's not too bad. That is a great question though, because most people do train for too long. So they literally, because 80-90% of people are most likely still doing split routine.
Yeah.
What they're doing is they're just trying to absolutely annihilate the body part.
Yeah.
So I see some people doing like longer than like an hour on one body part.
Right.
So for an example, for those focus sessions, I call them, you should do around about, let's just say 40 to 45 minutes max, really, if you're doing just 2 body parts. Any longer than that, it's just overload, really. It's overload.
Great.
Yeah.
That's good. So we're coming up on time, and I have a question, and you've probably answered this in many different places in this conversation as well, but your 3 top tips that you think could make the biggest impact on body composition, and it could be like sleep, which people may not associate with the best thing to be building muscle, but what do you think they might be?
Okay, the 3 main tips for someone looking to get like what like just overall kind of thing, or
the 3 main tips for people looking to get like you. So I want to drive people to your site. What's this guy look like? And right, I want to look like him. What's your top 3?
Okay, thanks, mate. That's a good ego stroke. I like that. Makes all that hard work worthwhile. Nah, I was just gonna say. So so the three top tips. So sleep is got to be up there. Sleep has. So if I had to pick 3, I would say let's just talk about nutrition, right? Because we both know how important that is. So nutrition is up there. So this is in no particular order now. These 3 are probably just as important as each other, but nutrition is paramount. So I would say to most of the listeners to firstly try and focus on, if you can, just reducing or eliminating processed foods.
Right.
For example, if you're going to take supplements, your supplements are natural, right? They're great supplements. I'm not just trying to big you up. I'm just saying that there's not many out there. Like this, most supplements out there are more processed than anything you can get your hands on, right? So just be mindful of that as an example, right? So try and honestly, I get such insane results with the clients I train and online as well, who actually eliminate processed foods, such as you said, even like bread and pasta and stuff like that. They're really, really processed.
Yeah.
And stuff, like the common stuff like junk food and food which is not ideal for your body. If you can try and reduce or eliminate those kind of foods, and focus on nutrient dense foods, getting in plenty of vegetables, good quality meats, as we discussed earlier. And I don't like to big diets up too much, but the paleo way of eating, if you can just try and eat whole foods, basically for the most part, even if it's like 70-80% of the time, and you're consistent with that, you're going to get insane results. So number 1 is nutrition, and within that category, calorie control, right? So within the same tip now, that is important as well. But this is actually what I wanted to say as well is there's lots of information out there, and there's like 2 camps now, right? You probably noticed this, where there's people who focus, it's all about nutrients and focusing on whole foods.
Yeah.
Then there's the other camp where it's just calories, like the if it fish and macros kind of thing.
Yeah. Where
it's like, it's just calories, that's all that matters, and that is absolute like bull crap. I actually infuriates me a bit, where it's like it's just about calories. Calorie control is obviously very, very important, but unless you're focusing on building a healthy relationship with food, like I mentioned, eating whole foods for the most part, then you can forget about it, right? So focus on eating as many nutrients as you can. And if you can, start tracking your calorie intake. It is. I don't like to. Certain people get a bit obsessive with this, so you have got to be careful. But for most people, it's a great tool to use. It's a great tool. I use the app MyFitnessPal.
Okay.
And even at the level I'm at now, I still track. Sometimes I'll come away from it for a few months, but I always go back to it. So nutrition is very, very important. I'm going to say sleep as well. So, and again, in that category of sleep, I'm going to put stress in there as well. Stress management.
Yeah.
So most people listening to this now, although I'm assuming most of your listeners are like probably at a decent level now by the looks of it, because of the content you put out there, but most people are in a stress state, an overly stressed state.
Yeah.
And it's an art nowadays to actually relax. It's actually an art just sitting there. And again, this sounds a bit like cheesy, but just being present and breathing is something I try and practice, but I find it really hard myself. So if you can just focus on most people are in a high stress state, so focus on just breathing and doing maybe some yoga occasionally and focusing on just like trying to calm your nervous system down instead of just go all the time.
Yeah.
And that then is going to bleed into your sleep. Then it's going to eventually teach you how to sleep better. So sleep is really important. So I ran through the stuff earlier with sleep. Focus on sleep quality as number one, and managing your stress. Right. So let's just say sleep and stress. There's a second tip. The third tip is lifting weights properly. Okay, so
right.
Again, these are in no particular order because I put this at the top as well if I could. Building a healthy metabolism is so important for long-term success. And nothing comes anywhere close to resistance training. Nothing at all. Like cardio, and it's good now because the studies coming out are saying that actually, even for your heart, they're saying that resistance training is superior to cardio. Obviously, bone density as you get later down the line. Nothing combats the aging process better than lifting weights because of collagen production. So lifting weights properly and doing it and focusing on technique and doing that properly and consistently to build your metabolism is so important. So just bear in mind real quick that the analogy I like to use is muscle tissue is expensive, right? It costs your body a lot of calories, right? So just to keep muscle on your body, your metabolism has to work really, really hard. So if you focus on purely just building muscle, not going too crazy with like high intensity training, because that can be counterproductive. You can put your body in too much of a stress state. Just focus on lifting weights properly. You don't have to go really hard and sweat loads and crawl out of the gym. Just do it properly and connect to the muscles. So so lifting weights is up there as well, mate.
Fantastic. No, that's great. And I'm pleased that you said that, because only last week I was having a conversation with a longevity practitioner, so a real expert in his field. And I said to him, what's the number one thing that we should all be doing if we want to live longer? And he said, just lift weights.
That's it. Chill.
He said, there are so many biological mechanisms that can be attributed to longevity through simply lifting weights.
Absolutely.
And so many of us think that we have to slog on the treadmill for hours and hours and hours, but it's simply it's not the case, and has been proven. So it's great advice.
That's great to hear that specialists like that are actually coming out with that stuff now. It's awesome.
Absolutely. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So, mate, we are just about at time, so I'm just intrigued. What's next for Martin Silva? Like, what have you got in the pipeline?
So in the pipeline, right? So I'm actually looking into getting more of an online. I've got like a decent following now.
Yes. So
right now I'm trying to immerse myself into producing better content and actually building an online business of some sort going forward. So I have done online coaching before, like basically online personal training.
Yeah.
What I find is I help people more with the nutrition stuff. Yes. That's the stuff most people need help with. So I am going to get back into that. Yeah. I've taken some time away to really focus on like getting my knowledge up and stuff and going down that path of perfecting my craft, if you like. So that is a big goal of mine now going forward, is building an online business, one-to-one coaching. My friend and I are going to be launching a website soon. I'm collaborating with a good friend of mine, and we're going to be basically pumping loads of stuff into a website and giving people loads and loads of free content. And the end goal is maybe to get some sort of kind of monetize it at some point later down the line. Sure. So that's a big goal of mine. And also, Stu, I'm thinking of competing again next year, maybe just doing one more show. So I haven't competed for like 3 years now.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of doing the pro show, the WBFF pro show in the Gold Coast next year. So that's another goal of mine. And yeah, that's it really. I'm just trying to, my main kind of, as cheesy as this sounds now, my main purpose in life, I've discovered over the last few years, is actually just to help people, much like yourself, to add value to the world. So I just want to reach more people with my message. So that's why I'm really, really, really grateful for you giving me this opportunity to get my message across. So yeah, that's it in a wrap, really, mate. In a
Fantastic.
nutshell.
Well, look, I think that you're doing a fantastic job, and people will be definitely be interested to what you've got to say because of what you've achieved, and also your unique perspective, because it's not often that you hear somebody in your industry talk about paleo and intermittent fasting and keto and all of the other strategies, specifically stress as well. So so good on you. So where should we send our listeners that want to find out more about you?
Okay, so I guess one of my main handles is Instagram. It's at Martin Silva Fitness. And my podcast as well. So I'm up to 50 episodes now, and that's where I'm aiming to get more traction now. So my podcast is Optimize Your Body.
Yes.
So I would go and check that out because there's lots of amazing information on there. I've had much like yourself, I've had some great guests on there.
Yeah.
And I've talked in much more detail about the stuff we talked about today and more.
Yeah.
And also I have a new Facebook page now, which is Optimize Your Body.
Right.
And I'm also on Facebook as well, which just Martin Silva on Facebook as well. But yeah, I guess the main two, Stu, is Instagram and my podcast.
Yep.
Obviously, I forgot to mention my website as well, which is just martin-silva.co.uk.
Fantastic.
So go check my website out. And for the listeners, they can get like a free ebook and stuff like that. If they go onto the website, they can get a free recipe ebook and some free content as well. So
Great.
Yeah.
Brilliant, fantastic. Well, look, we will plug all of the links and everything we've spoken about today at the top of the show notes, so everybody will be able to find you without any issues. So, Martin, look, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, and cannot wait to share this with our audience because I'm sure they'll get a huge amount out of this.
Stu, I can't thank you enough, mate. Honestly, I'm really, really grateful for this. It was some great questions, and yeah, thanks again for your time, mate.
Awesome. Hope to catch up with you at some stage soon.
Definitely.
All right. Bye-bye, mate.
Thanks, buddy. Bye.